Hey everyone, Deke here. Sorry if my voice is a little low and my energy is a little low as well. To be completely honest, the past 2, 3, close to 4 hours or so prior to recording this video has been a shit show. Just left and right things just going wrong on a technical level, whether it be trying to get videos done or trying to get some homework assignments done or just trying to go to the gym. I know it's petty stuff, but just when one thing after another goes wrong, it really gets me worked up, and I reached a breaking point and it really zapped the energy out of me. So I apologize if I'm not super upbeat about reviewing yet another Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. episode this week. And I'm saddened to say that, considering the state of mind that I was in, I was hoping maybe this episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is going to turn me around. It kind of did towards the end, but the road to getting there, I'm scared that this scenario of putting our heroes in space, involving time travel, it's making some frustrating decisions with its characters and with its story. The cracks are starting to show, no pun intended. The episode is titled Best Laid Plans, and that's what the majority of our characters are doing for like the first half. I want to say almost 2/3 of the episode are just laying down plans, talking to one another, and just discussing about things that we kind of already saw kind of on the surface level and never really proceeding in a very significant way. In fact, I'll go as far as to say that some characters downright frustrated me in this episode. Going back to what I kind of mentioned in last week's episode, where I thought that the whole thing with the Yo-Yo and Mac trying to help out Flint and going around the station was kind of the weakest part, but it was still pretty passable. In fact, it was more than passable. It was more than just average. It was still pretty good. This week is where I got into some frustrating territory, where I'm getting just a little annoyed, just a tiny bit annoyed with Mac constantly telling characters, no, simmer down, hot stuff, no, quiet down, pebbles. It's like the same lines over and over, and the same methodology and the same mindset for these characters over and over, where Mac feels like he wants to protect them so bad that he has to, keep them caged up. And the best way that I can summarize it is that Mac is sadly becoming a Walking Dead character. From the TV show, not the comics or the video games. I'm talking about the TV show. And today, that's not 100% a good thing. It probably would have been within the first season or so of the show, but contemporarily wise, I don't think that being a Walking Dead character is a compliment, because you're now jumping into that field of saying the same thing in every episode and having that same mindset, that same way of thinking that is frustrating for us, the viewers, and frustrating for the characters around you. And Mac ended up kind of frustrating me in this episode with that entire storyline, giving the entire thing almost like just a bickering sense to it, just like you would see characters bicker back and forth in The Walking Dead. We're just like, guys, just get some shit done. Enough with this bickering around about who should live and who should die and who should go do what and do this. And I'm just like, I'm done with this. Thankfully, the show does throw us a curveball with the storyline by bringing back Tess. I will admit that caught me off guard. It got me shook into my seat, where I was like, okay, not expecting that. I kind of appreciate that, but there's a little feeling in my gut that feels like that's just making up for the character having a very unceremonious ending when she did get killed off. Plus, it kind of takes away from the gravity of that. No pun intended. It takes away a little bit of that gravity, because as shocking as it was and as abrupt as it was, it made our characters feel how serious this villain was, Cassius, about how serious he was about keeping his control. So seeing Tess be the one to kind of bite the dust, I was like, okay, that hurt. Now that she's back, I mean, sure, I appreciate that she's different. Whenever you bring back a character from the dead, we know from various Marvel properties that bringing somebody back from the dead is not going to keep them exactly the same. They're going to be somewhat fucked up, and I'm glad that they're keeping that continuity. Speaking of Cassius, this is the first episode where he appeared more goofy than he did villainous. Up until this point, he was doing a really good job of being a really formidable and compelling antagonist, and now he would twirl a mustache if he had it. I know I use this phrase an awful lot when it comes to certain cheesy, hamped up villains, and he was starting to teeter that territory. He's not fully there, but that shot of him at the end where he's like screaming, the camera shaking, didn't exactly help from bringing him back from that territory. In fact, please, somebody tell me. I'm going to try to go online. Somebody tell me that somebody made a GIF of that so I can share it on Twitter, because that shit was hilarious. And it was supposed to be like a big, you know, like, oh, this villain is angry now. We should be scared about him. But it made me laugh my ass off. Funny thing is, though, that most shows have a tendency to try to bait me, and I don't go for it. I'm smarter than that. But Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., you know, I've been with them for a long time. I trust them. I'll take the bait. I'll bite. What exactly does Cassius have stored away somewhere that's telling him what's going to happen? Which would make sense for him to have some kind of external force or external source telling him what exactly is going to transpire within the next few, you know, events leading up within the storyline, because he has been having his moments where he has the upper hand against our main heroes. So for him to know the ins and outs of how his station works, in fact, the other characters are kind of like, how would you fucking know that? Even some of his lackeys are wondering, how could you possibly know this? I need to know. He's like, I got somebody telling me the future just as much as they had a seer telling them theirs. Unfortunately, it ends in a cliffhanger where we don't see who this is, so they're boiling it up and they're really playing it out. So that's got to be one of the things that's going to keep us watching for the remaining 2 episodes of this entire storyline, and I'm right there waiting. Aside from that, Coulson, May, and the rest of the crew on the Zephyr finally take off via the gravity storm, which I will admit on a visual level was compelling and attractive. That's where all the effects money went into, and it was actually some really decent production value. It kind of reminded me of the 2003 X-Men 2 movie, X2, X-Men United, where they're going through all those tornadoes and stuff like that. But that's a compliment, because it reminded me of Hollywood level effects. And here I'm seeing it in a TV show that started out from humble beginnings. So seeing that happen, I was like, okay, kudos. Then we get to what would have been a really awesome scene between Quake or Daisy and Sonara fighting anti-gravity. But then it's like the gauge of the budget kind of started to reach that red level, and they're like, turn off the gravity, and they get back to the gravity. So we're back to just the basic choreography. But it was an intense fight that resulted in Sonara dying. So that's one character gone that, her time came. Speaking of uncertainties, Deke. Jesus Christ. Speaking of frustrating characters, once again, seeing his eyes go back and forth between trying to decide whether or not to betray Daisy, only because that guy planted the seed. And it's funny because I'm not even, I'm not even blaming Deke in that situation. I'm kind of blaming the screenwriting, because at that point is where you're like, we've done this before. We've had that devil on the shoulder type of plot device where you got some secondary antagonist character telling another character, like, you know what you got to do, right? And they have that back and forth trying to decide what it is that they should do. And I feel like maybe they tested out a scene where he did in fact betray Daisy, but that didn't pan out, so they reshot it. Because please tell me, guys, you guys watching, please post in the comments. I need to know, did Deke's hair shorten towards the ending fight, going from the scenes that he had previous in the entire episode, then leading up to the fight, his hair got shorter all of a sudden? And I'm like, was that a reshoot? There is one thing that this episode for sure confirmed that so many people were telling me about last week's episode, and I didn't notice it, but sadly I didn't mention it in the review. I don't know why I overlooked it, but yes, I did notice the gravitonium, and I did have the idea that that Fitz and Simmons were going to be involved with this. This episode does in fact confirm that there's a time loop going on where they did invent it. They did in fact kind of materialize this element and used it inside of the Zephyr and used it inside of the lighthouse, and they're responsible for it, but in the past. So they're kind of like, how can we maneuver this without knowing what it is, even though it was us who knew it in the, again, the whole time paradox thing. The only thing I know is that all of our heroes are finally going to be reunited again at the lighthouse to take the fight to Cassius one last time within the preceding 2 episodes, and I feel like maybe gravitonium is going to play some kind of significant role to finally get our heroes back to the past, or at least to overthrow Cassius, and then that monolith is gonna get our characters back to the past and fix all of this. For now, I will admit that Best Laid Plans was 2/3 of a filler episode that sadly frustrated me more than helped me feel compelled with the characters, and made me feel like this was a necessary storyline going on with some of our characters, or some of the internal struggles that they're going on with. But at least these last third or so was exciting and entertaining enough for me to keep on going. And it's a very sad thing to say about a show like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D, who was going like one after another a batch of great episodes, or at least very, very good episodes. And to be honest, I feel like this teetered more on the average level. So I'm going to be giving Best Laid Plans a very, very low 7 out of 10. It was teetering at 6, but that last third did in fact save it. And you always want to have your last third to be good, as opposed to having the first third be good and then the last half or so be the mediocre one, because that's kind of what you're left with. So, those are my impressions of this week's episode. Let me know in the comments below what you guys thought of this week's episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Please subscribe to the channel to keep up with more Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. reviews. And again, support the video by hitting the like and share button. Until next time, guys, here's to hoping that I'm in a better mood next time, because I'm going through some frustrations for something that I have hopefully in the pipeline, considering no other things go wrong. But I'm excited to bring to you guys, because I've been working hard on this thing. I'm really excited about it. It was fun, and I'm hoping you guys will have fun along with it. Until next time, guys, see you all later. It kind of tries to do what certain other asymmetrical multiplayer games do, where one character is this big, powerful thing, and then the other characters are just regular humans trying to take it down. All off Friday the 13th right now. Evolve, however, wasn't as pristine and polished as, well, neither is Friday the 13th.